Ratterman. She's a filmmaker behind a short. Is it fair to call it black comedy?
Yeah, dark comedy.
Dark comedy called Suicide. So yeah, welcome to Nice. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you.
Glad to be here.
So yeah, if you could introduce who you are and the roles you have in the film, because you're not just the actress in it. You're, I think, writer, director, producer. I think.
Right, a little too many titles.
Lots of hats. Lots of hats you're wearing. And then if you could just tell us, your involvement with the film and what the film's actually about.
Okay, yeah. So I am the writer, producer, director, actor in the film. For the film, and the film is a dark comedy about Carson McCarthy, who is a suicide planning hobbyist. And can you say that? A suicide planning hobbyist? I think I made it up. I don't think that's an actual term, but I don't know how else to put it. So she's attempted 6 different times, and no one's kind of taken her seriously. She's clearly going through things, and so she decides she's going to make this last one her final big prove her point suicide mission, and so she kind of forces her best friend into doing this just because the best friend is trying to stop her from actually doing it. So they go on this really big and grand journey into the desert to do her final suicide mission.
And I know I've asked this before, forgive me for asking, but I need to ask this. Where does this, because, well, a couple of interesting things. One is, because it's about suicide, interestingly you made it like gallows humour, we call it gallows humour. And there was obviously a deliberate reason for that. Because you could either tell it straight down the line, very serious, which a lot of people would do.
Right.
But you've obviously decided to take a different track and make it this dark comedy. And there's a reason for that, which if you could explain, but also why you chose to make this film. What in particular drew you to this?
Yeah.
So it's a double barrel question.
Yeah,
sorry.
no, that's fine. Well, so for me, I like to take serious subjects and make them comedic, or as comedic as you can possibly make them, just because for me, I have a hard time watching dramas about those kind of subjects, even though I know it's probably an amazing film and I'll get a lot out of it. But for me, I've always grown up, that comedy, you can kind of get a point across without, putting someone in a deep emotional state or whatever it might be. So the reason I wanted to do suicide was because I think mental health isn't talked about enough. I don't think it's respected enough that it's a real issue. I have not personally dealt with it, but I have lots of friends who have, and I just thought, hey, why don't I take this subject and try and make it where people are okay with watching it and they feel comfortable watching this film, and they still take away things about it and they think about suicide and they see people going through it. So that was kind of my take on it, was using comedy, just like SNL does it with, Donald Trump. They're, getting their points across in comedic ways, and people want to actually watch that. It's easier to watch comedy and get something from it. And I also think, I think it's just a fun way to bring light to tough subjects. So.
And did you struggle with the title? And the reason I asked that is because you must have thought if we call it this, it might put people off. But there, again, must be a reason you decided in the end. And how much of that was a struggle to say we're going to stick with this?
Well, actually, my editor and I went back and forth because it was a 50-50. So 50% of people were kind of like, oh, suicide, oh, that's interesting, that's catchy. And then 50% of people were kind of like, oh, I don't know about that, But the reason I thought it was great was because it's a great talking point. When people are like, oh, I don't know about that, it's like, no, it's actually a really fun film, if you can believe it, and then they want to see it because, okay, wait a second, is it suicide and it's fun? But for me, I have this superstition that if you change the title of the film won't do as well. And I also just thought, suicide was catchy. So we did go back and forth on it, and no other name kind of stuck or really resembled the movie as good as Suicide, because the film, the way it's kind of done, is this very blatant, she's very open about this whole suicide thing. So it just matched well, and I thought, hey.
Yeah, because I suppose the paradox could have been that that puts people off. You're doing it to make a point, but I suppose you're always mindful that, but the flip side is actually might put people off. But you've got to make a decision in the end, haven't you? Right,
exactly. And there was really no other, title to do that. And it does put some people off. It definitely does. But when they find out it's a dark comedy, it makes it a little more interesting, because, oh, how did you make suicide a comedy kind of a thing? But no, we did struggle with that because I knew there's some people who hear that and they want to just stay away from it, So hopefully they don't. But
I think some people have been put off and they won't even watch it because of the title. Is that correct?
Yeah. A few people have felt that way, but once I kind of explain it to them, no, really, it's not anything graphic or something like that. It's a fun film. Then they kind of are like, oh, okay, you know, let's see what this is about. But there are some people who just, they hear the name, and I had somebody tell me they didn't even want to show it to their girlfriend because their girlfriend's mother, I guess, was dealing with suicidal issues or something. And so I was like, well, it's not, they've seen the film. They're like, I know the film isn't offensive in any way, but I just don't even want to bring that subject up, you know? So the title itself kind of just throws it off. But.
And when you're sort of dealing with that subject, and I mean, I admire the fact you've done it as a comedy, and I can totally understand why you did. To make sure you handle it quite sensitively, I know, I'm sure we talked about this, I know, but for the benefit of the camera, how did you manage to make sure that you stayed on side in terms of the story you're trying to tell is told in a way that would be as realistic as possible? Does that make sense?
No, totally. Well, I think I just tried to make the characters as real and grounded as possible, you know, real life, relatable characters. And I also tried to show each person's struggle with the issue, you know, the best friend, the mom, herself, Carson herself, because there are so many different angles of suicide. You know, one person will say, oh, suicide is selfish. The other person will say, you know, suicide isn't real. You know, there's all these terrible things around suicide. It's like, well, what about the person actually, you know, dealing with it, you know, but they can't see the light of all these people love them and please, you know, please stay in this world for us. So I think for me, the fine line was just making sure there was sympathy for each side, where you saw each character kind of what they were dealing with. And yeah, that was the only way I could think of doing it, was creating real characters, even though it's kind of this hyperbole of a situation, you know, kind of a wild situation that the film circles around. So,
and that kind of leads me on to asking about, because you've got all these roles attached to this, so producer, director, writer, actress. I don't want to use the word regret. That's not what I'm trying to get at. But in hindsight, because that's a shitload of work to be doing, isn't it? Because I know, just talking to filmmakers, most people that I know away from this, in fact everyone I know away from anything to do with this, haven't the first idea what goes into it, because they only ever see the glitz and glamour. The truth is, it's a shit hard work. I know that.
Yeah.
So I suppose the point I'm trying to make is, you're not just doing one thing. I mean, it's hard enough just being a director or a writer or a producer or an actor, actor. But you're combining all these roles, and looking back, are you completely convinced that you could deal with it? Because it's a heck of a workload, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the question I'm trying to ask is, how on earth did you manage to spin, we talked about this, but again for the camera, how did you spin those plates and make sure that you could deal with it? Because I assume it's very, very long days.
Yeah.
And everyone's looking at you, because at the end of the day, you're calling the shots, aren't you?
Yeah, and I think for me, what ended up really working out, I had a killer crew. It was a small crew, and I love small crews.
Photography, and I've spent it's amazing.
My DP, Andy, is amazing, and really everyone was amazing on that film, and just wanted to help out. They were there for the right reasons. It didn't feel like I was trudging through, you know, anyone through the mud or anything like that. So I think for me, that having the necessary key crew members was super, super helpful, and not anything more than that. Because once you get into this huge set of people and you're just trying to, I know I can make this product with the minimal amount of people I have.
Yeah.
And I know they're amazing at what they do, and they're okay with picking up a few other jobs on set, that kind of a thing. But then, you know, you're not dealing with managing so many people, and then you can't even manage your own job. Because you turn into the AD, you know? So I think for me, it was really tough in pre-production and really tough in post-production. But as far as on set, managing all those different hats, it actually was great, because I knew I had a team that I could trust.
You planned, I guess you planned it. Okay.
Right, and I did overly plan a lot of different aspects of it and stuff. But no, I would say, just as far as on set, my crew was, thank the Lord for that. You know, they were really amazing, and really good feedback system. You know, Andy would help me with like directing side of things, like, oh, what'd you think about that, and whatever. We did a lot of stuff on the whim, and let's shoot over here. You know, we were in Death Valley, so it was absolutely gorgeous.
And absolutely boiling, no doubt.
Oh, what's that?
Boiling hot, no doubt.
Actually, it was unbelievable. We missed the heat wave by a week, so we were there, and it was 75, and it couldn't have been more amazing. So it was actually like a nice little vacation. And they were like, you really lucked out,
Well, because normally it's over 100, I guess.
Yeah, it's literally Death Valley. You just die the whole time you're there. But we actually lucked out. It was beautiful, and they had a rainstorm the week before, so it was fresh mud cracks on like all of the mud area and stuff. It was gorgeous. So we really lucked out. But anyway, balancing all the different hats is tough, but I would just say, I knew I needed to do 100% to each one of them. So I made sure I tried to allot the right amount of time and prep work really was the bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when is there any point when you're putting this project together, and I know you're making a particular reason, but in the back of your mind, are you ever thinking about this has been kind of, or maybe it was one of the first thoughts you had, of being like a proof of concept for something else, or as a show, sorry, I shouldn't say, I don't mean a show, I guess what I'm trying to say is...
Like a pitch for something bigger.
Yeah, a pitch for something bigger. Or was that never part of the process?
For this one, it really wasn't. And in hindsight, I mean, the film is 28 minutes. We could have just made a feature, but...
Yeah, we talked about it, didn't we?
Yeah, right. And sometimes I kick myself for that, but I think it was great for what it was. And I did think about it for a quick moment about making it into a bigger deal, but I was kind of like, you know what? I've done it. I'm kind of ready to move on, and I don't want to get too wrapped up in just this project because I had a lot of other ideas that I was more that were more my baby, to put the time and effort into. If I was really going to spend, a year in pre-production and doing like all the, pre-sales and all that, kind of stuff, putting together a really good pitch, it wasn't going to be that project. And I love this film, but I think for me it had its time and place.
I suppose the truth is, if someone came along and said, say you had a meeting in Cannes tomorrow, you showed them that and said, actually, this could be a feature, I guess you could, if it was what you really wanted, you've always got the option of doing that, haven't you?
Oh, I totally do. And I think the only thing is, a lot of people have said, yeah, it'd be great as a feature, but already as a short, it's kind of, it's got to be getting middle and end. Whereas a lot of short films, it's kind of this, time and place. It's the most pinnacle point in like a big feature kind of film. So there's always like maybe a cliff hanging, or there's more you can add to it. But our film ended up kind of being almost a feature film in 30 minutes, So I think that was the other issue. If you're going to gain this audience who really loves suicide, they're going to want Suicide 2. They're not going to want Suicide expanded.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm
with you.
So that was kind of my thought behind that. But I have had some people in that realm, and even at Cannes that have seen it, and they're like, "You should make this a feature film," and it's just not in the cards for me.
Is there enough in the tank? Have you got enough that's left over? Would you have to presumably start all over again and just build against it? How would that work?
Well, that's kind of how I felt. Because if we had to match the whole film, we'd have to reshoot the whole thing anyway if we wanted to still use those scenes. It's been enough years that, Kenna, who plays Franny, looks different. I look different, So I think...
you've gone downhill big time.
Big time, yeah. So we'd either have to make her older or whatever in the film. But yeah, so that's kind of what I struggle with. I'm kind of like, we did it. It was so much fun. Little things that happened, just by chance with that film, we can't recreate that. So if we were going to do a feature, we'd have to try and recreate that. Little things that were kind of fun that we improv'd a little or what have you. So. And
can you give me an idea of the actual writing process? I'm always intrigued by this. You've come up with this idea. It doesn't necessarily have to be suicide, but anything you're involved in.
Right.
And you're, I don't know, lying in your bed or in your conservatory or down the bit or whatever. You've got this blank sheet of paper. Well, no, it'd be a laptop now, of course, or a pad. Yeah. And you've literally got nothing there. How do you motivate yourself to start? Or is it a case you've already got these ideas and you're just building? I mean, I guess what I'm asking is how does that the first blank page? How do you start the process off?
Yeah.
How do you motivate yourself to do that?
Yeah, that's actually that's something I've been struggling with the last month, actually. Like, oh man, I've got all these ideas, but I don't, want to write it down. But with this one, I was actually on set, and the stylist on the set was a good friend of mine from previous films, and so we were talking about, you get too into, the world issues and all these things you're annoyed with in the world. So we're talking about like first world problems and how annoying it is that people don't see the bigger picture. And then we kind of got into our friends who were dealing with mental health issues and how no one takes them serious and that whole kind of aspect of things. And And then we just, I was saying to her, you know, how much I'm in love with Death Valley and I really want to shoot there and this and that. And I was like, what could I shoot in Death Valley? And actually, this would be funny if a girl, you know, did this. So I kind of got this like really fun brainstorm going, and in between takes, I wrote down like a quick outline of the whole thing. And then when I got home from the shoot, I literally just slammed out a script online. So it was just one of those things where I had the motivation and I was like writing
the stars
it.
Had aligned,
yeah, exactly. So it was like, I know if I don't do it now, I'm gonna kick myself for it because I'll be like, yeah, maybe later. But when you have that motivation, I think that's when you have to just, whatever you're doing, stop, drop, and, you know, start writing it down and stuff. And then from there, it was much easier because I could, you know, go back and just edit it and everything. But yeah, initially I just spent like 5 hours just writing out as quick as possible. So.
Well, that was the first draft, of
right,
course.
Yeah, the first draft.
So how many did you go through to?
I think I did 4 drafts, 3 or 4 drafts. And it helped. I had a few friends. A friend of mine is a teacher who teaches screenwriting. So I was like, hey, can you?
Tick.
Yeah, exactly. Here you go.
Right.
So that was super nice of him. Steve, he did that for me and super helpful. So yeah, so that helped a lot. That saved me about 10 drafts, I'd say. And then I gave myself a deadline. I said, I want to shoot it by this day. So I better have the final draft by this day. And then once I gave myself that deadline and we had to shoot things scheduled and I had my DP lock in those dates and everything, it was like, okay, well, it's on you, you know, Molly, you better get the motivation somewhere to finish that draft up and stuff. So.
And when we talked earlier before we went on cameras, we were talking, this is to do with a lot of work ethic, I guess, but when you're saying about candidate meeting setup, and because you know the gig now, but would you agree that if you're not driven in this industry, you're kind of in the wrong industry? Because you need to be, I don't say you need to be pushy, that's not the word I would use, but you need to grab it and go, because if you're not, you're just going to be...
I think it's depending on what your goals are. Like if you want to be, you know, a creative only kind of a person, that's fine. But I will say, yes, you pretty much have to be extremely career driven to kind of get your work shown or out there or seen, unless I know some friends and they're unbelievably talented and they'll, you know, walk in a room and there's something about them that some important person comes up to them and says, oh,
bastards.
hey, yeah. And, you know, and then, you know, it's just one of those things. You can get lucky where just by chance you're one of those people and someone sees your work and they kind of take you under their wing and bring it for you. But I will say that's a rare occurrence. And for me, it's so far, you know, I'm not, you know, anything yet, but I would say that's helped me immensely is just constant grind of, you know, whatever it is, networking events or you know, email blasts or whatever it might be. It is a lot of, you have to have a lot of drive. Yes, I would say that. But I wouldn't say don't do it. If you have something to express, do it, you know. I think that's great, and hopefully someone will see your work somehow. You know?
So what advice would you, only someone said to you, had nothing to do with filmmaking, had not touched with a barge pole, but seen a film, just thought, oh, that looks a great career, I really want to become a producer, a director, an actor, what would your advice be to them? What would you say to them?
Oh gosh.
Don't do it. Well, no, you wouldn't say that. I don't think you'd say that.
I would never say that. I have some friends who say that, like, you know, I've always thought of doing that, you know, I kind of want to jump into that, and I think it's great. I'm like, the more the merrier, you know. Everyone has something unique to bring to a story or in a way they express things. So for me, I'm always trying to give them as many tools as I possibly can. I think to get started, I would just say go to a networking event, you know, and see who's up for it, see who's up to have you on set as a PA or whatever, just so you can kind of see how things work. But I would never say don't do it or stay away from it, because I think it's great when someone wants to do a creative career and they feel the need to want to be a part of that. I also hope it's for the right reasons and not because they want to be, you know, the Coen brothers or something just by chance. But yeah, so I would definitely encourage it if they were into it.
And are you based in LA?
Yes, yeah, I'm in LA there, North Hollywood area. So.
So before you really got, was this always the career path you wanted? And if so, and you said to your family, okay, I want to be in filmmaking, what was their reaction?
Yeah, they were great. I mean, my parents were always kind of growing up like, all right, Molly, whatever.
I'm
you
in the
wanna
right
do.
city, of course, aren't you? That's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I'm originally from San Francisco, so the Bay Area, which isn't far from LA, and it also has its own kind of creative thing going on there. Actually, a great indie film community is in San Francisco. But my parents growing up, my uncle is a comedian, so originally I wanted to be a comedian because, who doesn't want to be funny? Then I found out I'm not that funny, so I was like, well, I guess I'm gonna have to find a different career. And I absolutely loved theater, I loved entertaining, that kind of thing. So it's like, oh, I definitely want to be an actor. I think 4th grade, I decided this is what I'm gonna do. I also at that time said I want to do a bunch of other ridiculous jobs, but I kind of eventually funneled into that. My parents were amazing about it. They were always like, do what you want, but you need to work hard and do it. So go for it, we're going to support you, but you need to be the one who works hard and makes it happen, so that was great because it gave you that ability to see that, oh, I do need to have the drive to kind of make these things happen. And my dad made me do some business plans for him. If I wanted to go to a film camp, I had to put a business plan together.
What? Seriously?
Yeah. I mean, he didn't make me. I started doing it, and then he, from then on, was like, I like these presentations, so from now on you have to give me this, binder of a business plan.
Did it help though? Did it help you?
It helped me like immensely. I mean, now in life I still do it. You have to do it eventually. And so I was, I'd make him little business plans and kind of, why this would benefit me and what are my goals and this and that and how much it costs and how I can pay him back. And when you're 12 or 13, you're like,
you think it's going to cost $10, suddenly like, oh, no.
Yeah, so it was really fun, and I'm glad my dad made me do it because it kind of became our thing. But
and are you good at staying within budget? Because I know it's always a tricky thing. I never ask what budgets are, but are you good at actually staying within that?
Yes, for the most part. I think, I'm good at staying in the budget. I think when it comes down to I always try and allot that, the things you're going to miss kind of a budget. And sometimes I don't judge that correctly, whether it's the gas that I don't account for correctly or something like that. Because, we road trip down to Death Valley, for instance, and that was kind of something I was like, oh, yeah.
Suddenly it's $100 gone.
Yeah, right, exactly. And oh, yeah, we have 3 cars instead of 2 cars like we were originally supposed to have, that kind of a thing. But yeah, for the most part, I mean, we keep it really, really cheap and in budget. I hate using cheap because the product isn't cheap. But
no. I know what you mean. I know
yeah, exactly.
Because you still want it to have a certain. You've got to want to have a certain sheen to the film.
Well, right, exactly. And that was our biggest thing was what can we do to bring the production value up? Originally, the score was going to be all. My best friend, her band is amazing, Electric Strawberry. They're really, really cool.
Great name check.
And it's such a cool name, right? And so originally, I was going to use all their songs for the film because a lot of their songs inspired some of the writing, herself, my friend Emily.
Oh, that's
inspired.
interesting.
Yeah, so I was like, this will fit perfectly, in my head. But then when it came down to the editing, only 2 of their songs really made sense for the film. And so it didn't work well without a score, and I was like, okay, we want to bring our production value up as much as we possibly can. What can we do? And then I found this composer I'd been following for a while, Thomas Peters, and he's unbelievable. So he was super nice and worked with us, even though we had like a low budget. We didn't have any budget for composing originally, So that was something that kind of put us over a little bit more, but well worth it because we were like, look, we did all this effort. Why don't we bring the production value up as much as we can? Because this is a message we want to get across. We want it to be enjoyable for, people to watch and everything. So I think it helped. I love the score. I think that was one of my favorite things in the film was the score. So, yeah.
No, it is. I mean, I think it's a beautifully shot film. It's a really lovely film.
Thanks, yeah.
So when you're going to a typical meeting, say in Cannes, and you've got to set up, do you approach every one of them differently? I know it's all about circumstance, or do you have a general pitch? Do you go in, it might not necessarily, suicide might not have featured, I guess it does, but do you have like a way and means that you would approach them?
I think it's
general.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, but I mean, it's obviously knowing who you're talking to, and a lot of the things I've had set up are kind of for future things. So we're not really at the pitch stage yet for certain projects, but if we were, of course, I'd have the same pitch, just kind of catered a little bit differently, knowing that company and kind of what they like and what they're into. But yeah, I would say just knowing who you're going into the meeting with makes a huge difference.
Of course, yeah.
Not changing yourself, but definitely what they're interested in. You can't, if you like, whatever, green Jelly Bellies and I like red Jelly Bellies, I'm not going to go in there not, you know, and try and sell you whatever blue jelly or whatever it is, you know, I'm going to try and cater to.
Yeah. You've got to make sure it fits.
Right, exactly. So there is like little adjustments, but doing your research of knowing that company and what they do and having the passion that you know that you can, you know, connect with that company. Otherwise, why take the meeting kind of a thing and waste their time?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
And have you ever had a meeting, without naming names, you've gone in there and it's just clear that it's not going to happen, and just like, oh shit, you know, this is like a tough one, and this isn't going anywhere. And how difficult are they to because you've got to deal with that, haven't you?
Yeah, and I mean, I deal with it in auditions even, you know, as an actor, I deal with that all the time.
Because it's 95% no's or whatever it is.
Yeah, or like 99% it feels like, you know, but no, I think it's, to always have in your head is that a lot of the times you think they're not interested or they want to say no or this and that, are usually the ones that end up working out. Almost all the auditions I end up booking, like to use that as an example, I always think I bombed it and I just did terrible, and there's no way they're even gonna call me back or whatever. And then those are the ones, 90% of the time, you know, that I either get the role or get called back or whatever it is. So yeah, it ends up being not what you think. So I would stay, you know, no matter what, just keep chugging along, and even if halfway through you're like, I'm bombing this, you know, just stay in character.
You just don't know, I guess.
You don't know, yeah. You really don't know what they're thinking or how people process things. You know, sometimes I'll be talking to, you know, someone who's very creative, and it looks like they're not, I'm explaining a story, and it looks like they're not, you know, talking to me even, like they're looking the other way, but they're just imagining it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you never know how people process things and kind of what they're thinking about at that moment. But yeah, there is definitely, the worst is when you get that vibe, you know, that, oh no, I'm totally bombing this. And then other times, it is very clear you're bombing it, you know? I've had those moments too where I'm like, definitely was not a good one. But yeah, I would just say stick in it. So you never know.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Molly.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. I have something in my pre-death will that pertains to you.
Whatever that is, okay.
You made 6 suicide attempts within the last year, as well as multiple threats which you did not carry through.
Do you guys know it's a lot harder to kill yourself than you think?
Walked inside and felt her eyes upon.
In the summer of 2014, I hereby declare that I, Carson McCarthy, and my best friend, Franny Mann, will embark on a road trip to a desert area. Upon finding this location, I will poison myself to die.
This is insane. I'm not doing this.
You don't like it?
You've refused the medication, you won't speak to Dr. Green in your sessions, and so we're kind of at a standstill of options here.
You flunked out of school?
I'm out here in the middle of the desert, lost, risking my own life to help you.
Everything would just be better if I wasn't here.
How could your love turn so
This has been the best trip of my life. Me too.